Today, I want to talk about dealing with trauma and 4 tips or 4 approaches which you can take which will help you get over trauma in your life. Today, I want to talk about trauma, 4 tips, 4 ways of handling trauma. Specifically, I was looking at an article there in Quora about how to overcome the trauma of adoption, and I gave an answer to it. I'm going to come through these points, but also trauma in general is there are many different ways. So, for example, obviously, in the case of adoption, most people who are adopted will have some kind of trauma because although you don't remember consciously what happened at a young age, the young child tends to bond with especially with the mother, and when they're taken away at an early age, it creates some kind of lack and some kind of trauma. But also, the points I'm giving here are for any kind of trauma, and it's extremely common. Of course, we have the major things like grief, um, divorce, uh, suicide. Somebody dies in a violent death or an accident or something. You're in a war-torn country. You suffer acts of violence, but also there's all sorts of traumas. In my experience, I've met people who have trauma, all sorts of things like loss of a job, loss of a career, loss of belief in the political system or life, feeling humiliated for some reason. There's so many things which traumatize us, and it's about psychic reality, and psychic reality is how you feel inside, how you perceive inside. So a lot of trauma is from early in life, but we can be traumatized at any time. The question then is, how do we deal with trauma? So there's 4 points I want to talk about today, which will definitely really help you, and we can all do a little bit of this. The first one is therapy. For some reason, mental health is still a taboo subject. I don't know why. The idea of going to a therapist or counselor is still seen very much as taboo. But it's really essential for probably most people on the planet should probably go to some counseling or therapy at some stage. And you got a couple of options. You got regular counseling, it's usually, a few weeks, a month or two, maybe once a week. What's called psychotherapy is simply counseling but longer, usually better for long-term issues. And group therapy, I've done group therapy. Group therapy can be very useful, support groups, especially people that have been in the same boat as you. So therapy is a great way of dealing with it. A second thing, which is a very good and very important way of dealing with trauma, is diary writing. And why it's useful, I know a lot of people, I say this to so many people and so few people do it, but it's very useful. The reason why diary writing is so important is getting it out of your system, because we tend to go and have a circular motion with things that happen in our life. And we get stuck in this inner dialogue. We're just going round and round, 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 round circles, driving ourselves mad. And you ever notice when something bad happens and you just go over and over, and the thing's so many different ways of going over it, and each way is bad. Okay, so getting it out is good. I remember when I was much younger, I had a lot of life issues to deal with. I used to walk around the house, and my parents would be downstairs, and I'd be upstairs in the landing. And I just walk around the landing, and I would just talk out the different things I was thinking about. And I wasn't mad; I didn't have any problem as such. But I felt when I spoke out the words, it came out differently. And anybody who's been interviewed will also notice that you get more emotional when somebody interviews you. So why is this happening? Because there's one thing having it in your head, but when you get it out, when you either write it down on paper or when you speak it out, different ideas and concepts come out. And actually, there's repressed thoughts, things that you don't even understand. You don't even see the thought yourself. You don't even know yourself they're there. And they come out when you speak it out, and then they come out when you write it out. If you also look as well at the chakra system and like alternate health and so on, complementary health, they talk about the throat chakras finding your vice, but there's actually great truth in this as well. So finding your vice is very important, and it's a changing of the modality which will help you, that you're either speaking it out or writing it. So that's the second thing. So first of all, therapy or counseling is very useful. A lot of people avoid it. Second thing is, and also you go to a therapist you don't like, find it. Second thing is simply speaking it out or writing out. A third thing is life story. I think it's a very useful, and this is probably the major point of going to therapy really should be, and self-development work in general, should be working on your life story. And when I say working on your life story, I don't mean writing Gone with the Wind. I don't mean like your biography. Okay, the least popular section apparently on Amazon Books is autobiographies. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry writes their autobiography, and nobody reads them apart from them and their family. No, I'm just talking about writing out or explaining out. You can do it into a recorder on a phone. You can write it, whichever works for you. But getting your life story out there is very, very helpful. So uh, the thing is to try and find out where you came from. What is your problem? You have a story. Why do we like drama so much? It's a story. We all want to hear the story. Well, you should learn your story because I absolutely guarantee you do have a story. I have what I like to call uh, the promise, and the promise is the story that your parents told you about how life is, the belief systems to follow, the way to live in life, how you can be happy. And society as well, the government, etc., tells you a promise about how you're going to grow up and be successful and buy your own home and be a success story. So this is generic stories put out to you, whether a societal story or whether a family story. But what's your story? So when you start writing out and talking about this stuff and trying to figure out how did I get traumatized? How did this? What is all this about? And talk about it. And if you're not sure what to talk about or write about, just go through it each section, each little talk, go off into different angles. If, say, for example, you find it very hard to write, if you can get somebody to just ask you questions and answer the questions, okay? Because this is basically what happens in psychotherapy is the therapist or counselor will ask you questions, and you will start seeing it from a different perspective. Because the funny thing about life is we simply wake up and here we are as a kid. And we presume everybody's in the same religion. We presume everybody's the same lifestyle. We presume everybody's the same values as their family, etc. And we just presume a lot of stuff. But then when you start talking about your story and you start realizing what do you really think and what do you really feel, and I mean, it might not be very glorious. You might have all sorts of contradictory thoughts and feelings about life, which is fine. What we're trying to get with the life story is trying to see things more as they are. Now, you never see things exactly as you are, but you see them more as you are. Now, people are always in denial to some degree. I do understand this. And denial is a coping mechanism which we need in life to some degree. So we can never totally 100% see things objectively. But one of the biggest problems people have is with, say, trauma, for example, is they have a story built around it. And it's not very objective, it's subjective. And you need to try and get some perspectives, objective perspectives, to see things from different angles. And this helps a lot because the first thing we have to do is start seeing things more as they were rather than as we think they were. Because a big factor that I find is that people, they want to go back to the past. They want things to unchange. And the reality is you do not have a time machine and I do not have a time machine. So actually we can't go back to the past. We can't change the past. But we can revisit the past and make sense of things. That doesn't mean it's fully objective, but try and gain some perspectives, because often what happens in states of trauma is it something that happened when we're very small perhaps, or very young and immature. And now we might have different perspectives. So try and get some objectives on it, try and talk about it, try and get beyond societal prejudices or family prejudices, and start seeing things more as they are than as you might think that they are, okay? So it's trying to gain some perspectives, okay? That's the whole idea. And that's the first part of the life story, is simply kind of finding out what's your story. Everybody has a story. I'm not saying a story you may be interested in, but your story about how you are. And trying to gain some objectivity about it. And in the process, you'll gain some perspectives. And the basic reason for this is that unless we have a life story, unless we understand, well, this is me and this is where I came from and this is how I got here, we don't really know ourselves. Now, I don't want to get too carried away because you'll never fully know yourself or you'll never fully know anybody else. So that's kind of silly. But we need to have some perspective on ourselves. I mean, we don't want to be like Homer Simpson. I love the cartoon Homer Simpson, or certainly I used to like it, the older episodes. But it's a very funny character. You wouldn't want to be like Homer Simpson. There was one T-shirt. I remember Homer Simpson T-shirt was, without TV, you wouldn't know one day begins, one day ends. Another quote I saw him say something like, every day it's just the same old thing. Because Homer Simpson doesn't reflect, and he doesn't have a story. He just is a bunch of reactions. We have to go beyond that. So a life story is finding out what got you into this situation and maybe gaining some perspective. So you're a bit more objective. Okay, you were traumatized, you were the victim of a trauma, but as you gain perspectives, you might, put some perspective on it, all right? And that's what's required, because we move on to the fourth thing, which is self-reflectivity. So number one is therapy or counseling. Is most people could do it a little bit now and again, especially if you do it for a while, even once or twice, you'll see where they're coming from, and you'll understand the tricks that you need to know about. I got life issues. I got kind of a life story. Got to gain some perspectives on what happened. Maybe not be so polarized in my thinking and see different perspectives. Diary writing is very useful, getting your advice out, life story, and then self-reflectivity. All of these three things, psychotherapy, counseling, diary writing, life story, what they're all about, self-reflectivity. This is the big thing. The big thing is you need to reflect on your life, because you do not have a time machine. You can't go back, can't fix. Therefore, you have to integrate. That's it. That's the solution to your trauma. Your solution to your trauma is integration. So I'll give like a little example of my life. I remember some years ago, I had some failure in my career at the time, and it wasn't that big externally, but it's the end of a certain direction I was going in my life. And I really felt hurtful, because I'd worked so hard and I felt I was going a certain direction, and then it's obvious that that direction would not work out. It actually took me quite a few years to get my head around it, to have what I say, that life story thing of some objectivity about it, rather than just being, oh my God, this hurts and I'm a failure. Just to have objectivity and accept I have certain failings and certain character traits which would stop me from being a success in that career, and it's okay. It took me a while to be objective about it. And secondly, just to integrate it, because how do you get over a trauma? What most people want to do is they want to untrauma. They want to go back to the beginning, back before the trauma, okay? But the big thing is, life is like a line segment: birth, life, and death. Birth, death, life. You're here somewhere. You cannot go back. So you have to integrate. That is basically the thing that you have to do with trauma. And you might be saying, well, Dermot, how the hell do you integrate these experiences? You integrate your self-reflectivity. Maybe try some counseling. Maybe do some diary writing. Maybe talk to some people, self-help groups, etc. You try and figure out your life story, how you got to where you are. How do you feel about it? How do you feel perhaps you were a victim? How do you feel about being a victim? Do you want to be a victim all your life? What about the perpetrator, or the thing that caused you that problem? Is that going to hold you back for life? How do you feel about it? How do you think about it? You need to work through this, which could, just to get perspectives on whatever is traumatizing, could take a few weeks or a few months. And then to fully integrate it could take a few years, but that's part of life. Mental, emotional things take time to work through. But the key thing is to work through, because what a lot of people do is they just don't go beyond that. And they kind of shut down on a certain level. Like, you won't go back into a romantic relationship, for example, because you're burnt once or twice or whatever. Or they won't go back into a business or whatever it is. And you need to integrate the experience. But to integrate the experience, you need the self-reflectivity of working out what traumatized you, gaining some objective perspectives about it, making sense out of it, and whatever the issues are, working through the issues, which to some degree is again this thing of denial and accepting certain things about yourself you're not happy about, and then accepting it. Because there's always two things. You either change or accept, change or accept, change or accept. So you have to change a thing or accept a thing. That's basically what you have to do. So whatever issues come up, you have to change or accept each of those issues until the trauma eventually, little by little, it's like a stain on the floor. You keep washing this goddamn stain, and bit by bit, the stain goes away, and the stain just becomes a painful memory, one of a list of memories. And the final point we could say here is this very nice saying, which is this too will pass. There are many things which we might not like about life or time or whatever, the thing that you can't bring back the past and so on. But also, there's time as a healer, things move on, and whatever happened over time will become a memory. And as you work through the issues and self-reflect and make sense of things and work at integrating things, you can turn it into a memory. Now, the pain will usually always be there, especially if something is very traumatic. I'm not saying the pain won't be there. The pain will be there, but you've integrated it into your life. It's part of your new life story. Your life story, you will always have a life story. Why are life stories important? Because when we look at TV, movies, the drama, why is drama? Why do we like drama? Because it brings metaphor into our life. The problem with life is often that we feel that things are meaningless. We feel that we're worthless. We feel that we're a failure, etc. But when we dive deep into things and bring things out, like say the drama, for example, we work things out, drama, TV show, but also our own drama, we find meaning, we find metaphor, we find our truth, not anybody else. This is not objective truth. This is our objective truth about our life, our experiences. And it brings a certain succor to us when we find our truth, when we find a metaphorical way to live life, when we integrate our experiences, when we gain philosophical perspectives. The pain will always be there, but we integrate it, okay? No cookie cutter technique here, but 4 things will help. Psychotherapy, diary writing, life story, self-reflectivity, and that's the whole key to try and integrate over time. Whatever trauma you have, you can definitely integrate it, but it's about working through it, okay? I hope that helps.